Hey there all, it is July 2nd and I am late with this video. I originally filmed this video last week with Jonathan Swindle from Pride Corpus Christi and the Mosaic project, and my intention was to have it out this last weekend. With a myriad of issues happening, with technical issues, time commitment issues and constraints, update things, all kinds of fun stuff behind the scenes, I got delayed in getting this out. So getting this out there today, I wanted to make sure I extended my apologies to Jonathan, Pride CC, and everybody at the Mosaic Project. This was a great interview. Lasted a long time, as you'll be able to see in the timestamp down below. But I feel every bit of that conversation was informative, impassioned, and really gave a strong sense of advocacy and commitment to improving the lives of LGBTQIA plus individuals, not just in Corpus Christi, but in Texas at large. So, hope you enjoy the interview. Again, apologies for the delay on this. Appreciate any feedback down in the comments. And so here's my conversation with Jonathan Dale Swindle. Enjoy. All right. Jonathan, welcome to Woodworks and this first interview in this new place. Glad to have you with me today. So for our viewers today, tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and kind of kick us off on a topic you'd like to introduce us to today.
Okay. So my name is Jonathan Swindle. I am the board president of Pride Corpus Christi, also known as the Mosaic Project of South Texas. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization here in Corpus Christi. I've been in charge of it now for, I guess, a little over 3 years now, in my 4th year as president. I'm from Bishop, Texas, originally, been born and raised here. I've had a web development business the last 13 years, and I also have a business in Chicago where I built a software platform to do real estate, investment trust, life safety auditing, and data management for their portfolios. And then, yeah, I guess those 3 major things are kind of who I am and what I do. And what I've done, I think, not just to survive in South Texas, but also thrive under my own direction and my own kind of compass, so to say, as opposed to being directed to make decisions. But I guess something to talk about is it's Pride Month, right? So we're celebrating here in Corpus Christi, but this year's a little bit different. It's not just a celebration, but it's also in some form a protest and resistance to the changes in the federal government, and I think some more aggressive tactics that have been occurring on the state level as well under this regime, so to say.
All right. Yeah. It seems like we were already on the precipice before then of where the idea of normalcy seemed to move further and further away, even when we were under somewhat of calmer times 4 years prior to that. And communities just were completely upended, not almost, but literally with the stroke of a pen. And watching the way it is impacting even the people that I engage with has been something that has been heartbreaking and infuriating. I don't know, for myself, being a licensed professional, there are ways that I'm kind of bound, and there's ways that I'm also not bound. And where I can be unbound, I definitely want to try to be able to make some kind of an impact. That said, those of us in the counseling profession may not know exactly how that advocacy can work in a way that actually can serve the communities in a beneficial way versus a detractory way. So for somebody like me that would be trying to become involved and trying to understand more about what they can do, kind of baby step us through what Pride Corpus Christi's kind of mission is, and then kind of if you can, kind of show me the evolution of the mission statement, the mission, vision, values, as it would be, from, let's say, 2022 to now here 2025, if you see that there has been an evolution. And then from there, how can people like me become more involved, more engaged?
Well, it goes a little bit further back than 22. As an organization, it was founded in response to the Pulse Orlando shooting. It was really just kind of a grassroots effort with different LGBT individuals here in Corpus Christi. Really, they did Pride downtown, where they did their kind of first parade and block party, so to say. I guess it really wasn't as much of a block party as it was a parade, and then there was some stuff at House of Rock. But it was organized by a semi-loose organization now at this point, but the CCLGBT, which really I think some of the remnants that are left of that are Brittany Andrews and Katana Sanchez, which are also in charge of the Coastman Trans Alliance. But they got very organized with individual Sarah Lydia, and there was also Dylan Rios back then. And I think the real purpose of it was visibility here in Corpus. I've come to learn that there was another Pride Parade that had happened sometime in the 90s, around 96, 97, but it wasn't city sanctioned, so there wasn't permitting, things of that sort. It occurred on Ocean Drive. That I'm still trying to get information on, pictures and proof that it happened. I've seen one photo, but there definitely has been prior instances to having parades here, Pride parades specifically. But really, I think carrying on for those 2 years, 16, 17, it was really just having that Pride parade as a function. 2018 was really, I think, a bit of trying to evolutionize it a bit with Bill Helsher from the Wellness Foundation got involved with it. And it kind of turned in 2019 with Tom Tagliabue as the president of it. A bit larger scale. There was the block party that was down by Water's Edge Park. It was, I think, more of a Pride week. There was a full week of celebrations of different events and things that were kind of hitting up different demographics and such. But in total, probably about 7, 8 events, I would say. So it went from the 1 to the 7, and then COVID hit in 2020, and the organization really for 2 years just kind of coasted. It did do a little bit, but wasn't really anything I feel like was substantial. It wasn't really carrying its mission, which is visibility for the LGBT community here. But it was a struggle to do that when you're planning to do something and then there's a significant setback, such as the world shutting down, right?
Right.
So 2022, really at the end of 21, Tom didn't want to be in charge of it anymore. I think he felt like he had done what he could, and there wasn't anybody who was interested in stepping into the role. And so I did it as opposed to letting it just kind of go away and fall apart. I didn't want to see that happen. And so my main interest that first year in 22 was let's bring it back. Let's make sure there's the parade and the block party. It had already been decided that it would be moved to October because of the cooler weather. Tom actually had to go to the hospital in 2019 from a heat stroke and such, from being out in the sun all day. And so in June, and so it made the most sense to do that. And it's actually worked out favorably for fundraising and things of that sort. But the goal was bring it back. Let's still do our comedy night. Let's do our movie night. Let's kind of do all of the normal Pride stuff. And I think we were successful with that. I refused to do a proclamation with the county or the city. I did not feel that that was something that either of those government entities had earned. I'm not really one for performative behavior, and that felt very performative to go there and smile and shake pictures or shake hands and take pictures with people who, frankly, were not doing the due diligence to ensure the progress or the equalness of our community here. So we have not done one since with either entity, but in 2023, really started to be more of a like, what more can we do? And we started to do more and more events. I think really started to develop more relationships within the community. I will say my main 2022 was seeing what the landscape was. 2023 was understanding that there was a lot of damage, divisiveness. So 24 was really, I think, a response to having repaired a lot of those relationships. In 2025 now, having even done so more. But last year we had 26 events through the month of June. And so it was aside from exhausting, it was a response to the fact that the community was actually starting to be more organized and come together and work more collaboratively. And a lot of that divisiveness I slowly etched away at. And then 2025, with a slide that eventually gets to, there were over 40 events. And I told Robert, who's the vice president of the organization, we were getting started planning. It's like, we're not doing another 26 events. Like, that's too much. Let's pull back. And then there we were with 40, or 40 plus. The fun part, and what really I've tried to do as a goal, which I think we've been successful with, is that Pride is not in ownership. Pride Corpus Christi is not in ownership of Pride. Pride does not belong to Pride Corpus Christi. It belongs to our community. And so the real goal of it was, let's have the platform that the rest of the community can mobilize from within to celebrate. And I think that we did that really well with the way our website is constructed, the calendar of events, the Pride planner. And so a lot of those 40 plus events weren't Pride Corpus Christi who did them. It was the Brittany Andrews, it was Katana Sanchez, it was the Aurora Arts Theater, it was the Port Aransas Community Theater, it was All Saints Episcopal Church, it was St. Paul United Church of Christ, it was Strengthening Wellness, it was other people who were carrying the torch, which has made it a lot easier to manage and navigate, while also allowing us to focus on, when we talk about evolution, what is our role as an organization moving into 2025 and 2026 and onward. What gaps do we see, and how do we achieve that to ensure that our community is seeing the progress that they need? And frankly, that is like moving a mountain. It's pushing against a lot of systemic discrimination that exists here in Corpus Christi, from be it private sector, public sector, nonprofit organizations, et cetera. I mean, we certainly have our fingers on the pulse and understanding of the problems, and our job, I think, is less about how do we celebrate that we're here and show people that we exist, and more so, how do we build community and get people to work collaboratively and cohesively towards a common goal for the success, to undermine the efforts that have been put into place for generations to discriminate against people who are LGBT here.
Right. And what I hear with that, I actually have two things that came up in my mind as you were saying that. When I was thinking about the idea of adversity and ways that not just Pride Corpus Christi, but the larger LGBTQIA plus community has had to face. Mine wants to take it in two different directions. So I'll go with kind of what maybe the harder one first is. We can obviously see some division and animosity when it comes to the electorate and the way our elected officials, both at the local, the city level, county level, state level, and even national level impact. But with bringing these communities back together and kind of creating this large visibility for it, what challenges, if any, have different pockets of communities either LGBTQIA plus direct or affiliated communities? What kind of eating my tongue here. What, if any, kind of difficulties have been experienced trying to bring them into the fold a little bit, or feel like there is a place for them to be included?
Well, that's a lot to unpack specifically here in Corpus. I'll say, let's start with, like, nationally, we, as an organization, joined the United States Association of Prides, as well as Interpride, and both of those organizations. The USAP specifically is for the 50 states, right, that are coming together to talk about the different prides and stuff that they're celebrating. Interpride is globally, so we've got people who will come from internationally to San Diego's, where we had the last conference last year was in Colombia. We did not make that one, but we're members of that organization, as well as then Centerlink, which is specifically for LGBTQ centers, community centers. And the biggest thing for us was so that we were connected more so, not just as an organization, but as an effort with people who are also doing that type of work with us, just from that basis of getting an understanding of what are we doing in comparison to equivalent cities of our size and scale and resources. And I will say we are above and beyond as far as like the things that we're endeavoring to do and what we see other ones do. And a lot of that problematically comes down to that most often Pride organizations do not have continuity with leadership. The biggest reason is that this is not paid work. There are not grants out there. We do not worry and have the concern about federal funding or state funding coming in to support this. All this is done by right now, a board of 15 individuals who contribute their time because they want to see a more successful or more healthier community, and they want to see this type of programming. For me as an individual, it comes to because I remember what it was like being 10 years old and battling with this identity and not having that representation, not thinking that this community existed for me. We didn't have social media and such back then, so I didn't have that as a resource to at least investigate and understand that there is something and someone and people out there for me that were like me, especially growing up in Bishop. But going back to kind of tying all of that in, it's largely was what are we doing in comparison? We have a lot of the same problems other organizations do. We don't have the problem San Diego Pride does, which after everything was said and done, they had $6 million left over. I'd love to have that problem.
Right.
But so that was just to get an understanding and a bearing on there. Here locally, there was definitely, as far as like within the LGBT community, there was certainly a lot of infighting when I first got involved. I'm not going to say, oh, I stopped and prevented it, but more so, I've tried to structure this organization with different board members that are more receptive and affirming of the LGBTQIA plus as well, right, to ensure that there's more support and more accessibility and inclusivity, which is, again, the entire point of this as an entity, but definitely trying to resolve a lot of that to bring it together. And really this last year of 2025, I was trying to get some understanding of how do we interface and engage with people outside of the LGBTQIA plus. And that being said, it's not that they're outside of it. They might just be more straight or affirming or straight and not affirming, but how do we build those bridges? And so my initial interest was to try to look at who are other marginalized communities or entities that are fighting, like the Instituto de Cultura de Hispánica, the NAACP, the local chapter here, things like that. The organization TABFI that just had Juneteenth celebration, but maybe more so, how do we interface and work together and support one another and try to build in those inlays or that road for our community to feel less isolated and more connected. We did do a community needs assessment this year. I haven't looked at it since June started, but we had a little over 100 respondents in it. And it certainly showed that, one, if you were transgender in South Texas, you're going to have a really difficult time getting good employment and getting good quality income. That definitely for sure is what that data spelled out, right? If you were a gay white male, you're doing great. You're making good money. Even if you do or do not have your education, there's a lot of those similar patterns there as far as even discrimination we see of different, even if the sexuality or gender identity and stuff don't play into it as far as the way that it's there. But that's where it proves then that there's obviously, that's that moving the mountain, the bigger, deeper ingrained systemic problems that exist here. But to me, to be able to build upon or establish some type of ecosystem where there can be success. We do have our group that we have now, our community that we have now, and how do we build a system and something in place where we can support one another? Kind of like with this radio station, even though we had a setback last year after we got our FCC license, we have 8 years to get it going. And the whole point of that is, one, is to be able to have that ecosystem of that content development, building those personas, carrying drag identities a little bit further. So then they have personas online and have characters that they can build out outside of the bars and things of that sort. But going beyond that too, and having other entities or talk shows, or using that as a mechanism to reach out to, be it NAACP or the Instituto, kind of giving them access to that platform as we build it, to build those relationships and work together. In time, this is something that we will launch and will make accessible, and then hopefully be able to use that as a tool to reach a certain income bracket here in Corpus that may not be able to afford all this fancy technology and may not be able to have access to the internet as steadily or readily, easily as I would say my privilege has allowed. Right. And there certainly is that group of people here in Corpus that do live below the poverty line, and we do need to reach and help them understand that they do belong here, and that there is a community, and that there is a pathway to help make them successful. So, yeah.
I think one thing that's really standing out from your delivery here is the dedication towards the inclusion of trans individuals, where I know as I go through different communities, both locally and the statewide level, as a sex therapist, I try to keep my ear as connected with different communities from so many different genres and subcultures. And what I'm finding is across the nation, where once there was a place, kind of a welcome spot, there seems to be kind of a rise in trans exclusivity, even within what it seems like a reversion back to LGB, and trying to drop off the rest. Almost like they're a liability, like these humans that are just looking for visibility, their rights, and their inclusion are being sidelined for what seems to be, from my perspective, a liability from government fear of regulation, or from funding, or from legislation, or from persecution. And it's so, while it's also it's like I said, it's pleasing to hear you be so emphatic about their inclusion, with regards to that exclusivity, that I'm experiencing. That's something that you're experiencing, and if what, how does that motivate that dedication for you?
So I think from my own personal experience in that, here in Corpus Christi, I've found that may just be a generational issue. I certainly haven't had any conversations with a Gen Z person who's pulled me aside and said, you're doing too much with the trans community, as I've had with people who are a bit older here. And for whatever reason, that they feel that is the intent to be exclusionary, or that my perspective on it is largely that whoever is being marginalized the most needs our presence and support the most, right? I will say, as a 36-year-old individual who was born and raised in America, I am absolutely disappointed that the country that I grew up in, that I went to school in and read the Constitution and was educated about, that we would ever look at somebody. We've learned that lesson, did we not? Right, with our Jim Crow era and our slavery and all of that sort of stuff, we've learned that lesson, that it is not to anybody's benefit to sit back and marginalize and discriminate and to isolate and harm anyone. The only lesson historically in humanity that's done that was to gain power. And my mother is German. I understand that history pretty well. I have a family member, my mom's godmother, her husband prior was in the SS. And so it's like I understand what I feel is the intent behind that. I think that if we make an individual group an enemy, it makes it easier to focus and blame and to try to ostracize. Hate is easy. Negativity is easy. The hard part is being positive about something. It's about overcoming and really putting the work in. That's the hard part, right? To get towards having a better, healthier society. It's really easy to go on Facebook and say sick, gross, vomit face, right? What's harder to do is to get up off your ass and to go out there and meet people and talk to them and understand their problems. And then not just do that, but go a step further and try to contribute to their wellness, try to contribute to a better world and society. That's the difficult part, right? And so I think what it is it kind of somewhat comes down to those that are complicit in that pursuit of harming a group of individuals is laziness. Right. You're just like, I'm going to sit there and hate that. And Fox News or someone else told me that they're the problem. Let me tell you, I know trans individuals. I know a variety of different types that are interested in different things and dress different ways, just as very much as any other individual does. And they have all the same hopes, the same dreams, the same concerns. They want to pay bills. They want to go out on the weekends. They want to celebrate life. But we all want to do it without being beaten and dragged in the street. Right. And so how do we work towards doing that instead of being the guy who's standing on top of the mountain blaming somebody else when the fault is their own? Right. Right.
It's like intentional ignorance is an achievement to behold. Right. There are people that are almost seemingly willingly ignorant about things, or you mentioned laziness, like not willing to do the legwork to see if what they're being fed is actually true.
To educate oneself, right? Yeah, because disinformation is the era we are in with the internet, right?
Right.
That everything that's on there is like, you have to question, is this real?
Right.
Even if it's on both sides. Am I being told something authentically? Or is this an AI picture, a video? Or is this a fake news article? We know how weaponized that terminology was used in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. I can tell you what is real, and it's getting out from behind the computer, and it's going to a Pride event. It's going to a bar or a gay bar or a community event or to a nonprofit and volunteering your time. That's real. That's authentic. And those are real people that you interface with that have real problems and need support and need help and need a guidance on getting through and overcoming something. And I think that that's where our organization is really starting to try to shift itself as we did community building, we did the visibility. Well, the Corpus Christi knows we're here, right? They know we exist. At the other end of it now is, do they hate us or do they love us? And I can see what the Caller Times says, right? The article that was recently, there was an individual that said we all needed to go back into the closet, even though they were an 80-year-old man that went to the First Methodist Church. Well, great. Yeah, we're not doing that. We will never do that. We're not going into any proverbial closet just to make you feel more comfortable with the society that we as a generation have moved beyond from.
Right. It is so bizarre, even from my from all the research I've done, and it's readily available for people to be as continually, willingly ignorant about history. Gay and lesbian and bisexual people and trans people have existed throughout history. It exists in all forms of life forms, and to look at it in this, what I see as willful ignorance, is to deny that which is blatantly obvious because of your own internal ickiness, for lack of a better phrase, of it. I want to say it feels bizarre, but that would be the PG one. It pisses me off. It fucking infuriates me.
Right.
Because I'm somebody who, it may go down to my neurospiciness. If I don't know the answer of a topic, I want to know more about it. I will dive into literature, and what the literature can only give me, I dive into communities. I want to know their lived experiences, because there's going to be a wall of experience. As much as I study, I have a ton of books here, a ton of books in my other office on different topics regarding sex, sexuality, gender expression, kinks, and fetishes. That only serves me so good if I can't connect with those who are out there. And that's how I attribute myself to becoming a better human, is to be willing to learn what I don't understand.
Mhm.
Even if I don't, my agreement, I'm not even gonna say agreement, because my agreement is irrelevant. Even if I don't understand it, even if I don't choose to take a part in it, or if it doesn't feel like an aspect of me, that should not be a barrier to still trying to become as close towards understanding as possible. It only helps connect us. And in an age where pretty much across the aisle, it's kind of ubiquitous. All sides say it's the most divisive we've ever been in, and yet almost everyone in their side say the other side needs to clean their shit up and come this way. And if we would just take the moment to, not even just one moment, but dedicate the time to try to learn what is it we are actually fighting against, and in what way am I dehumanizing those that I'm fighting against. Some people just truly have some vehemently hateful positions, right? So it's not to give a blanket pass to that. And how much of that is because they don't know, or they've been fed a certain narrative, kind of like what you brought with fake news. They're only receiving information from a certain way. As somebody who's like not just reads books, but I'm also a researcher as well, I'm noticing from my own experience, people do not know how to find information. That is absolutely lacking from the cultural zeitgeist, is the importance of what it means to do research, as much as like how ubiquitous was the 2020 with I did my own research. No matter what side of the pandemic you were on, I do my own research. Ended with a Google search, or going to your favorite .com that already provided you with the confirmation bias perspective that already fed into it. And so I know I struggle with the idea, or not the idea, but almost this feeling of not hopelessness, and it's not quite despair, because I'm not going to give up in what I do, but also worry like how we're going to be able to make a dent in what is happening in a meaningful way with what we're surrounded by, with our administrations, the people that are in control, and people that are rewriting legislation, and or just not caring about existing legislation. If it can be overridden with the stroke of a pen in an executive order, or I'm not sure that's legal or illegal, and going forth anyway, nobody has stopped them. How does somebody like me stay out of that cycle of despair and find an anchor point?
So I would back up a little bit to my experience here in Corpus. I had an office in Wilson Plaza, which is now another one of those abandoned buildings in Uptown. Shuttered, can't go into it. But whenever I was in it, I had a space on the 13th floor, which was the 14th on the elevator. And I had originally was for my web development marketing company, and I was young and naive, and I thought I rented 3,000 square feet, and I thought I'd fill it with staff because I had work opportunity, I was doing stuff, and I thought I would hire and we would work and everything would be groovy. And then I found there weren't people here in Corpus who had web development backgrounds, or there wasn't anybody educated with Java and PHP and HTML and all that sort of stuff. And it was like, oh, okay. Then my mom had a massive stroke. And so it was like, okay, well, I still have another year or so on this lease. It was a 3-year lease. What am I going to do? And at that point, I had already tried to find employees and contractors here, and I couldn't find them. And I just so happened around that time, I met an individual who was trying to do software development, more application ends, and I was doing more web. And so from there, as I was starting to broaden my network and my I guess horizons, we opened up a co-working space. So because I had all this space that I was like, I have to pay this lease, I'm having to do my mom's situation and her bills and all of that. And I try to bring people together through that. And we did really well in the sense that this wasn't a gender thing. This wasn't a sexual orientation thing. It was just like, what do you do, right? What is your profession? Come talk about it. We had a Mevo camera, so we had these live streams that we would do on Facebook. And I think it blew up fairly well. It had we had people who were on the city council coming. We had one of the state reps and stuff that came to my office space. And it was a little silly to me because I'd been there for 2 years already doing web development and all this other stuff for different entities, including the city of Corpus and such. And then all of a sudden I'm doing this thing and everybody's like, oh, it's this big thing. Let me tell you, it made me very little money. But what it did do is it helped me very clearly see that Corpus was not some super rich community. It wasn't heavily invested in. And it kind of, at the end of it, when I decided to close the space, I understood very clearly that there was a lot of people who were just kind of fighting over scraps in town. It really wasn't a place where you could excel well. It was a place where you had a dream, you thought it was going to pop off, and then it didn't, and you just kind of pivoted, or you left, which there's a lot of people who just leave.
Yes.
And Corpus does really well at that. I mean, that's the thing we succeed at the most.
Great export.
Yeah. And the reason for that, I feel largely, is because what we fell at is community. We fell at turning to one another and lifting each other up. Too often, people try to turn to each other and take. And I think the biggest thing that we have to do if we want to be better individuals or have better communities or have safer neighborhoods or is that we have to turn and listen to the other person. What is it you're going through? What is it you're endeavoring to do? And no, I can't give you the shirt off my back. I could, but let me tell you, I've learned you don't do that because then you get left with nothing. And unfortunately, most often people won't turn back and give you their shirt off their back. Right. So then you're left naked and all of a sudden nobody cares. So the better thing to do is to find ways that you can sustainably contribute to those around you and the wellness. And the most basic thing you can do is don't be fucking shitty. Right? Don't get on Facebook and say sick and gross and vomit face. That's a good starting point. Go further than that, right? And be affirming. Lend out a hand, smile, contribute some positive energy to the world around you. That's not, I feel like, asking too much, but it's a really good start and it's a really good place. But it's definitely get away from just sitting behind your computer. The next step beyond that is volunteer. And the thing that I've enjoyed the most about this work, we've had a huge outpouring of people wanting to volunteer this year, way more than we've seen in the past. So I really feel like, at least with this in this community, we've gotten to a point where I think people want to mobilize against the negativity and the things that they're seeing. Our job too as an entity is, well, how do we not just utilize their time and their interest, but also equip them to be successful in that, where they are supporting their community and they're leaving after having worked with us, changed to be able to have the tools to continue to employ that on a daily basis. I've worked with Bay Limited, which builds the refineries and highways and stuff here, and for 13 years now. And one of the biggest things that I always admired and enjoyed about the company was that they had this big safety program, and it was called Beyond Zero. And the whole thing, it was committed people, I can't remember exactly what it was, committed people or people caring about people's safety. That's what it was. And so their whole thing is that it wasn't just in the workplace where you had to make sure, hey, you got to you have your safety glasses on, or you've got your welding gear and you're correctly wearing it and blah, blah, blah. But also at home, where if you saw a guy with a chainsaw cutting his tree down or something, and give him some safety glasses, make sure he's got the appropriate shoes so he doesn't lose his foot, right? So it's kind of that similar sense with just being nice and good to the people around you and helping them out and supporting them. That makes the world just like 2% a little bit better. But if we all did it, I think that it would be a much better world to live in than the one where we're sitting and listening to a very angry, like tiny little man on television.
Yeah. I know I'm hearing all that and I agree with it emphatically. And I can't help but also think of the way people are incentivized by dopamine experiences, right? And nothing can get a hater's dopamine going any quicker than either likes from people that agree with them or angry faces or counter opinion comments from people who disagree with them.
Right.
That's the motivational thing, right? What you're saying absolutely is true and absolutely needed in large quantities. And that takes time. That is
that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the hard part because it's not sexy. It's not provocative. It takes a willingness to put yourself aside for something, at least a portion, not all of you, but at least if we could even just give 1% of ourselves to something that doesn't guarantee a direct return immediately, imagine the kind of impact that could have, right? What is that? The compounding effect of those kind of
right on scale.
Yeah. And yet it's not sexy. That's not provocative. That's not going to give me that rush. Because immediately what you were saying about seeing somebody using a chainsaw at home and offer them this, too many people would rather, it seems, my experience, stay back and record that for the eventual fail that the person would experience and hurt themselves, and then get that on Instagram.
Sure.
And it becomes viral to look at this fool and put some Benny Hill music over the top of it,
right,
of them falling out of the tree and maybe the chainsaw taking their leg off. Get the laughs, right? And that seems to be a kind of a motivation. So I know it almost sounds like I'm being kind of pessimistic of it, and I don't want to take away from the importance of it. And it's also identifying the challenge of fighting against this instant gratification, even if it's in the negative, that seems to motivate even people that would probably be, and I'm going to use a phrase here, would be on our side, would agree with us, right? There's still that kind of that desire to get that dig on there.
Well, I think the truth of what you're saying, though, is that the reality is that is what is winning, and that is where we're headed. Yeah. Because my response to that is why I carry a firearm whenever we have our events. That is why we hire security. Right. Because I feel like that is that cancer that is growing in our society. It is not the country that I saw growing up that I associate with. Right. However, we do as an entity, as individuals, have to prepare and be able to respond to that type, because it starts with the little angry faces in the comments on Facebook, and then they carry that same anger out into the world. Yes. And then a circumstance or problem happens. We had a couple years ago, there was the Sandy's Diner that was doing a drag brunch. And for some reason, some guy was like, he wanted to protest and went out there and had signs saying they're groomers and blah, blah, blah. I'm still waiting to see in the news when a drag queen has somehow done something with a child. But what I do see regularly are youth pastors at churches. Now, that being said, I'm not anti churches. We work well with All Saints Episcopal. We work well with St. Paul. I'm sure there would be other churches, even though there's a lot more of a list, and I've only got 2 or 3 I can name that are affirming in this town. Just saying. But I'm sure, right. But I'm sure that those aren't the only places that are breeding hate or having problems, but they certainly seem to be a pathway of accessibility that is being abused by a certain group of people that then we are not responding to or putting any laws in place or trying to resolve whatsoever that problem that seems to be quite systemic. And my question would be, well, why, right? Why are we then so focused on drag performers reading books to kids at events that many people are at because we're considering them groomers?
For me, I'm 11 years older than you, so no, I don't need a cane, but
yeah, my knees already hurting these days.
I'm having foot surgery in a month and a half, so I will definitely need a cane then. But I also kind of grew up during I grew up during the 80s and 90s, and not only just during the HIV and AIDS crisis, and being being a formative developmental memory for me, and how it affected the community around here, as even that touched like a little cis white guy in Corpus, raised by as far as I know, het parents. My mom maybe not so much, but she was a wild child. Growing up during those times, what it seems like it's happening, especially with the drag performers being tagged with groomers, is not that dissimilar to the fight for gay rights and even gay marriage. Is that it's just one comparison to bestiality. If you do this, there's going to be, then they're going to be
a slippery slope.
Right. It's just a slippery slope into the next thing, or it's going to be open season and there's just going to be pedophiles running the street. It never occurred. Those things never came to fruition, but it's the latest. It feels like it's the latest in the outrage du jour.
Right.
Right. What is serving to foment discord in a very, what seems to be very fragile, intellectually fragile communities that don't have access to, for what I was talking about, don't have access to education or understanding of how to sort through information to find the facts about things, or even to see what was true.
Well, that's why I talk about the importance about getting out from behind the computer, though, as well. As like, we just had our pub crawl, and I won't name names, but an individual came up to me. It used to be a CCPD officer, and he was telling me that he used to be super ignorant and was anti-LGBT and such, and he's a cisgendered straight male. And he told me at the pub crawl that he's like, I did not understand that it's just normal people just living their lives. And he didn't understand that. And he apologized for having been super ignorant about it when he was younger and was on the force and such. But he gets it now, and he comes to a lot of our events with a firearm to make sure that we're safe.
That's rad.
Yeah. So, but that's because he understands now, because he took himself and brought himself into a community that he wasn't willing to before. And that's where then you start to realize that not only are these just people like you and me, but they're also American citizens. And so when we talk about, or we see all this hate on Republicans saying, oh, this is about demon rats and Democrats, or then you see Democrats saying stuff about Republicans, that's where it's just this faux bullshit that's been created to separate us and divide us. And at the end of the day, my dad's a Republican. He voted for Trump every chance he could get. If he could vote for him today, he probably would. However, he's been in my Pride Parade for twice, right? He's flown down to march with us, also carrying a firearm in concealed carrying, because he wants to make sure that I am safe. And he understands those dangers and such. But what I'd love to see, and what I would want to have happen, is that more individuals take all of that bullshit and that disinformation and all that stuff that they've seen and move it out of the way, and get up and get out and talk to people, and or at the other end of it, seek therapy, right? I mean, I think everybody, it's just unfortunate that it costs money, and we don't prioritize it typically. But I think everybody needs that. I mean, we all do need some sense of unpacking the things that we've been taught, or the experiences that we've had that have misdirected our understanding of what life should be, or our perspectives of what life should be. I think we all need a little bit of pursuit of that guidance. I think there comes a point for most of us as we go into adulthood that we realize our parents weren't perfect, that they didn't know everything. And certainly in my experience, that they were flawed. I'm sure for most people, their parents are flawed, but that it would behoove us, especially if we want to enjoy this life while we're here, to go out and actually experience the world that's around us, and maybe to question the things that we might have been taught in our schools, or at our homes, or in our churches.
Yeah. I want to, as you're saying that, it made me think about an intervention I use with with couples, and it comes down to this sticker. And what I would say here is, well, it's great to get people that may not understand or be lacking in knowledge. I would also almost do a call to action to apprehensive allies, right? Those who would call themselves allies, and they don't participate, they don't advocate, they stay quiet when injustice is being done in front of them, right? Or when those comments are happening, are they either trying to protect the person, trying to engage, trying to show support? What are they doing for it? And where I use this, and I use this in couples therapy all the time, is how do you create a safe zone for this? It's a demonstrable thing. It's not a statement. To say you're an ally, to say you're creating a safe space.
Well, that's my problem with that thing, but that's a different subject.
Yeah, it's because it has to be demonstrative. It can't just be a sticker, right? And I
that's that performativeness of it.
Exactly. Like, what is your follow through with it? If you say you're going to do this, or you say that you support this, I want to know in what way. So I have a problem with the word try. I don't have them in here, but I have my little Yoda thing that used to be in my other window. It says, do or do not, there is no try. Right? When I hear the word try, or I try to show support, tell me what the actual substantive steps are. What is it that you do? What is the verbs that go beyond just the word try? So it's not this a pledge to do something. Where is the follow through and what you do? How do you create a safe zone? How do you create a safe space? How do you, other than calling yourself a safe person, how do you do that? Right. And I think we have many more people who identify as safe people that don't demonstrate that. Some of that could be either conflict averse, and it does require some level of uncomfortableness, right? A willing to be in that discomfort as you stand by your declared principles, as you just stand by your declared morals and ethics as they're being challenged, right? I try to do that as much as I can in the ways that I can. There's always more I can do, and so I try to hold myself accountable to that very same thing. And I can't help but wonder if it won't call the other side a lost, or other individuals a lost cause, and if we could just get our people who claim to be an ally to more coalesce into some kind of action, what good we can do, right? What changes could happen from that? What world could we actually exist in if the apathetic or the afraid stood up and participated, made their voices cacophonous with the rest of us? That's my little soapboxy moment. Kind of really, as you were saying that, I couldn't help but think of, I'm running through a kind of a yearbook of people who say, oh, I'm your safe space, I'm your safe space. And they never actually interact with anybody from any communities. They're a safe space because they have their cousin or their sister. And that's great to be able to state that. Is there that 1% additional you could add into it? Because if it's affecting everybody, is that 1% additional you could do?
I mean, at its minimum is going onto Facebook and putting the heart or the like when there's someone else putting the angry face. But let me tell you how wasteless that is. I mean, most of us, I feel, who are LGBTQIA plus at this point, I hate Facebook. I hardly ever want to use it because it's a cesspool. There's so much hate on there. And also, how much of it is even real? I would say we observed on one of our videos that we had done this year, just a massive, and I would say probably 3 negative comments a minute on the video for 3 days. Thankfully, it would subside in the evenings. But when I would actually look at these people's profiles, it was like they had 1 friend, 15 friends, no photos of an actual individual, no work history, and so it made me truly question, for the bulk of them, were they just little bots that were running in some farm and it's AI and it's, following a formula and whatever it's supposed to do. Because one of the things I also noticed was a lot of the comments were very, very, very similar. They were just kind of offshoots of the same string of whatever narrative was being played. And so Facebook has a problem. They need to fix that if they want to still exist in 10 years. I'll say that much. Because one of the things that we did this year in response to them, I think allowing people to say that being LGBTQIA plus was a mental disorder, that they allowed that in their policy. Well, we took $1,500 of our money and didn't give it to them this year. And we're not the only Pride organization that did that. So as that type of stuff and behavior continues on their end, if that's the world they want to foster, let's see if there's still a billion-dollar company in 10 years whenever we're all on the other end of this and the boomer generation has finally let go of that death grip of power that they've held on to for so long. But anyway, Facebook, don't love it. Obviously, we have to be on it because it's a social media platform. We are working very hard on building our own internal communication processes. We have a newsletter that you can sign up for where I get a little political every now and then and send stuff out, so that we have our own methods to communicate. We didn't do really hardly any KIII, KRAS. I don't see those as being beneficial at this point for the type of work we do, even with like KEDT and such. I know there was a couple interviews that were done, but by no means was it the amount of effort we put in before. And let me tell you, we've seen the exact same amount of people turning out at our events. In fact, many new faces this year. So it's definitely told me, as someone who's been in marketing for 13 years, that those entities are not as successful as just building relationships with your own community and ensuring that you have a method to reach them directly, as opposed to just shouting out from the rooftop on a television station or a billboard or whatever. Right. And then also just providing general value to their experience when they come out and they're like, what can I do today? Really ensuring that ultimately that they have a good experience when they go out and do something, especially for our volunteers and for especially individuals who are trans. We don't want them to go to an event and then face discrimination, right? We want them to see themselves represented in the people that they're interacting with, but then also the people that the vendors they can purchase from, or then in the flags that are there. When I first got involved with Pride, there was a certain individual that did not like that we would want to use the progress flag, really wanted the old school one. Well, we use the progress one because we've made some progress and we are inclusive and we are concerned as well about other people and their success and their well-being. And so that's where our society is moving to. Robert and I recently were in DC, and we were, I think it was the Jefferson Memorial, and there was a quote on there, and it talked from Jefferson talking about how there's a reason we have a democracy that moves so that our laws and our Constitution and all of that can be amended to represent society as it progresses. Making America great again is on this idea that we're going to go back to the 50s. And let me tell you, we got the internet. We ain't ever going back to the 50s. It's never going to happen. Right. So we need to do our due diligence to understand that society is moving forward. And so it's the responsibility of the individual to learn, educate. When I took over Pride, the biggest question I had was like, how can I represent the trans community when I don't even know what it means to be trans? I don't have that life experience. But then it again comes down to sitting down, having a conversation, and communicating with somebody and learning something new, something different, because there is a huge spectrum of life experiences in America. Don't even get me started on the ICE situation that's going on right now.
No. Another soapbox moment will pop up for me. No, I completely hear that. And to even add to it with the Make America Great Again, just that statement alone it has never been great for all, right? It's always been a select few.
Right.
Those who are in positions of power, authority, control, the means of production, the means of wealth have always benefited. So even when people say, are in strong support of that. It's like, take your own family back into the 1950s, into the 1940s. Where was that greatness that your family extolled? Was it really great from that standpoint? Was it great for your neighbor? Was it great for African Americans at that time? Was it great for Japanese Americans? Was it great for Chinese Americans? Was it great for Jewish Americans? Probably not. Probably not at all. So I don't know where this idealized thing, I've never understood that. And yet, I don't want to lose sight of being able to still have some kind of effect on those individuals in a positive way to help them out of that cloud of ignorance, right? I'm not always clear of what that path looks like. And I sometimes, even as a therapist, I can get caught in my own bullshit too.
Well, at some level, you have to have a sense of pity for people like that, because at the end of the day, they're also destroying their life experience. I never understood drag. I'll never do drag. However, well, that's probably a lie. Maybe I'll do it for a fundraiser or something, but I won't do it as like a regular thing. That being said, I absolutely enjoy it now more than I did because I understand the purpose of it, right? And I understand, like, going out into doing different experiences and such has really, I think, enriched my life, meeting different people. Just being able to look at how I was raised and the formula I was supposed to operate in and kind of breaking out of the rigidity of that has enriched my life more. And so that's, I think, what people who are so just rigid with what their beliefs are not really allowing themselves to enjoy that full spectrum of color of what life can bring you.
Absolutely. And this is why having that visibility with what Pride Corpus is able to do, and all the other organizations that are bringing themselves into the fold with not just Pride Corpus, but celebrating Pride in their own ways to keep increasing that visibility, to stay vigilant even in the face of legislative and cultural adversity here, to maintain that visibility and maintain that not just a performative safe space, but an actual acted upon, demonstrable safe space for them. So let's hope that momentum doesn't dissipate, especially as we get to October when we're having the next the Pride Parade. Then that we don't have the next crisis du jour that happens with the administration, right? Or any number of things. I mean, we're totally not at war, so who knows what's about to happen. With that, before we wrap up, I definitely want to give an opportunity for you to talk about specific aspects of Pride, what y'all have going on here.
So, I mean, Pride is almost over. I'm not sure by what time you'll have this edited and it'll be out there.
Pride and out there by tomorrow morning.
Okay, well then, if it's tomorrow morning, then let's pretend that it's the 25th. Then you can go to the Hooks game tonight and join the Pride night over there. It's really, there's a BOGO ticket deal. If you go to our website, when that slide comes up, there's a button on there that all you got to do is put in CC Pride and you can get a BOGO offer on your ticket purchase. Right there, purchase BOGO tickets. And then the next night, so a really wonderful organization called the Texas Riviera Empire, which that's from their coronation there in that photo in the background. We've partnered with them this year to do a Pride Gala where they're actually doing their divestiture. And what that is that they spend a year, they select a charity or two charities, and they spend a year fundraising for them. That could be through doing drag shows, doing cookouts, but they raise money the entire year. And then at the divestiture, they give them the money that they've raised. One year they did the Rainbow Room, which works with the CPS here to make sure that kids that get pulled out of their homes in the middle of the night have blankets and diapers and clothing and toys and things of that sort. And they raised $22,000 for them one year, or $21,000. So yeah, they're a really wonderful organization. I've enjoyed being able to get to know some of those people. They've been doing it now for 37 years. I believe they're in their 37th or 38th year. And I think one of the first coronations that they held was here in 1980. I've actually got one of their original programs, which, if you're interested, is on our if you go to programs, it's the Our Community Lives or Our Community Lives, which is our local LGBTQIA plus history. And it's got all sorts of stuff going back, I think, even into the 70s. We worked with John Oliva at the Corpus Christi Caller-Times to put a lot of this type of stuff together, but some really interesting stuff in there. But anyway, back to TRE, they've got their event here on the 26th at the Bay Jewel, and we're partnering with them to make that event happen. I'll be working with them on getting a new website up too, because if you go to it, it's pretty just like white background with text on it. So it'll definitely be important to bring it forward into the 21st century and make it mobily responsive and help them use that as a platform to fundraise as well, sell tickets through it, et cetera. But that's kind of, I think, the two major things that are left. There is also the CCLGBT Family Day. We're partnering with them this year, and that's going to be held at All Saints Episcopal Church on the 29th, following their annual I think it's if you scroll down a little bit, it's like all at the table or something of that sort. It's on the later end of this list, but place at the table, that's what it is. So it's their they kind of close out Pride Month with a affirming LGBT specific sermon. So I actually attended it last year, and he just joined our board recently, Father Wickham from the church there. I consider myself very atheist/agnostic, but that's just basically because my experience going to the church in my youth was not a positive one. I don't want to go somewhere that's supposed to be filled with love and experience hate. But I've learned that there are churches and there are people in that, and there are congregations rather that do just have love and community, and they're good spaces. And All Saints Episcopal is definitely one of those churches. And I've really enjoyed getting to know Father Wickham too. He's just a brilliant individual, has some really good ideology that I think for individuals that are spiritual could live by. But one of the things that he and I have discussed working together on with our organization and his is kind of more of a long-term plan, but is formulating and trying to deploy a LGBT youth shelter here in Corpus. So kind of comparatively, something in Houston would be like a Tony's Place, and in San Antonio is like the Thrive Youth Center. So there's too many stories that I've become aware of in the last 12 months of LGBT youth here, specifically trans youth that live on the streets. That I feel like we need to do or more due diligence on being able not just to reach them, but support them. And unfortunately, when I say it's a 3 to 5 year sort of plan, it's largely because funding is going to be so critical for that. As an organization, laying the groundwork and the infrastructure to get to that goal is going to be big. And frankly, I think it could have been more of a 3-year thing, but under this administration, it's probably more of a 5 or beyond that, because right now the messaging coming both from now the feds and also the state is that if you are LGBTQIA plus, don't be. And that's just not the reality. Yeah. So.
And additionally, because it's not just June when Pride matters.
Yeah. We don't just become like us and be loud and proud in June. We're us year round and through our entire life existence.
So tell me about becoming involved.
So again, being involved is that volunteer. We do have a forum on there. We're actually building June. All of the infrastructure developments really stopped just because we focused on the actual events and such. And but we've been building a volunteer system that will allow people to actually go through some training. Because we used to in the past work with the Coastal Bend Pride Center to route people to make sure that they understand what all the letters mean and what the community is going through and what the resources are before you could come volunteer. And right now, since we're no longer working with that organization, really, we're building out our own training process digitally to allow someone to kind of become a little bit more educated and understanding of what those life experiences are before they come in an event, wear one of our shirts, and call themselves a volunteer. Additionally, even at minimum, is our newsletter. We've have a sign up form on our website. We used to not have that. You used to have to be like face to face, and we'd get you signed up. And we work really hard to try to keep hateful people out of that space. Right. A big reason for that is that it's important to us that events that we're promoting or things that the resources that we're promoting that you may not see on our website are protected, and especially if they're new relationships with new partners, we really only want to roll that out to people who are not going to create harm in those spaces. And so if you apply for the newsletter, it's not you sign up for it. You apply for the newsletter. We will look into you. We'll look at your social medias. We're going to, before we approve someone for that. And if we haven't interacted with you in any form, I look, have you bought a ticket in the past? Have you gone to events? Are you following our page? If you're not, we're not likely to allow you to get into our newsletter. We're very protective of that communication tool that we've been building. But that being said, we do have over 500 people signed up for it.
I imagine somebody saying it shouldn't have to be that hard to get a newsletter. And you're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
But we've had instances prior to the development of that newsletter where we had things that were individuals created harm for relationships that we were building, and we want to protect that. It's super important that we protect that because we need to build the momentum, and things are are a bit more upfront and open and honest on the newsletter than what we might be elsewhere on our website or our social media, because we know that those individuals that are signed up for it are people that have a relationship with, we know are affirming, we know they're part of the community, et cetera. So, but that's what I'm talking about, where we're building something that is super important to us and is close to home and close to our hearts. But volunteers are obviously then that next tier of like, well, we want to make sure that people who interact with you are having good experiences. And even beyond that is then getting involved in our board. Right now, we don't have any available seats, but there are 15 individuals that are on our board, and it's a pretty wide range of people in our community. So that used to be our board as far as our retreat that we do every December. There's a couple new faces and faces that are on there that aren't part of our organization anymore. But yeah, certainly a pretty wide array or a diverse group of individuals, so to say. That's pretty important that we reflect all aspects of our community. And there are straight people on our board too. And that's important. And like I said, Father Wickham just joined, and he's a cisgender straight male, has a family. But he's a individual who's affirming and is concerned about the wellness of our community, and especially ensuring that there's a pathway to success for everyone. And he doesn't proselytize, which is important too. If you're interested in going to the church, there's the avenue there, but he's certainly not going to try to force you. Because we last year did an event where we did faithful conversations, and we did it at his church. Mostly only his congregation showed up. And so this year we did it at the Hidden Door, which was something that was important to him, is that, there was an opportunity for those that did have questions or maybe wanted to have that conversation but didn't want to go to a church. They were able to go to a gay bar and sit and talk to, there was 3 different congregant pastors there. He had tried to get a 4th one, but that individual wasn't able to join us. But it's good that I think I really enjoyed it. And I think it was a good outcome for those that attended. But especially in Corpus Christi, it's a community that's named after the body of Christ. It's important that we build those relationships as well with the religious community. That's been important. So, but there's a pretty good group there, but you can certainly get involved by joining the board. We did have an advisory committee in the past. We're looking at restarting that here again and putting a new structure to it. But I think those are kind of the main ways. If you're someone who is a performer, that could be someone who's an artist, someone who is an actor, someone who's a drag performer, a diva performer. There's an author, a musician, a dancer. We did just launch our performer portal this year, and that might just go up to the thing and get involved, and then you can actually see there's I think we've got 43 individuals. Yeah, the Perform at Pride in the Performer directory. And so the big reason why we invested in this too is that there's the people we've interacted with, but then we really wanted to make our organization more accessible to people who wanted to utilize it as an outlet. And so those that have applied on here aren't just our friends, they're actual like individuals who just expressed an interest in engaging and participating with Pride. And so after their application, we reach out to them. Some of them we did feature articles on to get to know them a bit better, and kind of help the community get to know them a little better. But there's a pretty interesting outlet here of different arrays. And so like you've got the Live Oak singers, and I don't necessarily know how to say the Migizook Eagle Woman, but certainly
has me intrigued.
Yeah, certainly the thing that's exciting about this is that for individuals or groups or performers or performances that we didn't know about, we're getting to know about through it, and are going to utilize this to create a bigger and better Pride experience every year, so that level of entertainment raises for everybody. So there's more reason to get involved and more reason to participate, and again, just more visibility as well. So
absolutely. Now, tell me about the Mosaic Project.
So the Mosaic Project is who we were at day one. So when it was formed in 2018 as a nonprofit 501c3 organization, essentially, when I took over in 22, we kind of just, everybody was like, what is this Mosaic Project? What is Pride Corpus Christi? But they kind of just really interacted with us as Pride Corpus Christi. So we kind of just slowly, like quietly did away with Mosaic, and that's who we were on the legal paperwork. But we filed a DBA with the state to be Pride Corpus Christi, and then that's who we just started to operate as, which was good when all we were doing was Pride, right? But Mosaic Project, we've really brought forth from the shadows, so to say, because we are doing more than Pride. We're not just celebrations anymore. It's more of like, how do we actively utilize nonprofit status or the organization thereof to maybe start to attack some of these deficits in our community, these gaps of service, et cetera. And so we launched our, in partnership with Strengthening Wellness, these free mental health support groups for the trans community. Finally, in July next month, we'll have an inclusive LGBT support group, and that's through our board member, Jace, who is also known as Calico Candy. And my understanding is there will be certain group sessions where they'll do it as their drag persona, which is pretty cool. They had expressed before they joined the board that was something that they wanted to do. And so we're like, let's try it. Let's see how we can make it happen. And so that's something new that we'll be launching here pretty soon. We also launched our Transgender Resource Initiative. A big reason for that is, again, our community needs assessment. Many of the respondents, their income was not a living wage. And so because of that, we knew that they were having difficulty getting gender affirming items that they could use to present themselves as how they identified. Right. And so we utilize some of our sponsor funds every year. I mean, this is the first year we're doing it, but we're going to keep it going. We utilize some of our sponsor funds to procure gender affirming items such as binders, packers, breast forms, makeup kits, different things around that vein. And then people can apply. We review their applications. And then if they're approved, they can either pick them up at Strengthening Wellness, or they can also, we can ship it to them. We're looking at phasing out the shipping option just because it's an additional cost, and that means less items from the fund can be distributed to people. But that's still something that we offer currently. This is also then as we start to continue to work out the underlying infrastructure for the Unity 89.1 FM station. It's going to be more of an endeavor of the Mosaic Project and not as Pride. A large reason for that is we want the radio station to be inclusive, not just of the LGBT community. And the whole point with the Unity is that we want it to be accessible as a platform for anybody, as long as they are affirming of being an empathetic individual. So you got to have a little bit of heart, and you're welcome to use the platform as we build out some of the programming for the radio station, from talk to music, as well as to being a DJ, etc. We're not afraid. It is an LPFM, and we're not afraid of using the Safe Harbor Act or period. So I think it's between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. You can talk about sex, you can curse, you can whatever, because it's assumed that children or youth will not be listening to it during those hours. No. And so we were, in the last time when we were working on it, we were going to launch a woman who was you could call in, and they were going to do tarot readings and such at 11 o'clock, and it was going to be live, and that was a local individual, and we were going to try an array of different things. And so it's certainly something we're still going to endeavor to do. It's just been put on the back burner while we figure out our broadcasting location for it. But we've already got all of the equipment to do it. We just want to ensure where we plant it, that it's going to be a safe home for a good couple of years before launching it. But again, we got 8 years to go live. We also had launched in partnership with the Art Center of Corpus Christi, our inclusive youth art program. That is so that LGBT youth, they have to be 16 plus, have the ability to go to the Art Center. There's once a month at the beginning of the month with a partnership with them. They can do different affirming or infirming I don't want to say events. It's just like workshops. Mm-hmm. So that one of them was a sewing thing where they learned how to sew. Another one, I think they were doing like different stuff with paper mache. And there was, I think the last one that they just did at June, which our capacity for it was 20 people, and it maxed out. So we were excited to see that it's been receptive so far. But I know there's some interest that we're going to start kind of branching out, not just doing Art Center as well, but just creating a space for LGBT youth to know that they're doing an affirming activity that is more representative of the way that they identify or their orientation, but then also in a space where the educator and the people around them aren't going to make fun of them because they're trans or make fun of them because they're gay or lesbian. So we're really excited to start working on that one this year and having that as an option. I think we've had 3 classes so far and getting ready to have the 4th, or workshops rather. And it's free. That's a big aspect to it as well. And then in the long term, just because of my background in business and as well as the co-working space stuff that I did prior, I really want to work on it. It's a collective at the top. That one's going to be more of a life legacy sort of program as we get it going there at some point. It's the most underdeveloped for the moment. And that's really like, in a sense, an LGBT chamber. I don't want it to be, it's not really, I don't want to call it a chamber because chambers are antiquated and their purposes are not what they should be. And so, but that's kind of the closest way to identify what it is or what it'll be at some point. But the whole goal of that is so that when we look at our community needs survey or assessment, I built the software so that every year when you come back and you update, where are you at? How are things going? What's your income? You know, is your housing stable? That the collective, the hope is that those are programs and functionalities that are built to address, to ensure that when we start looking at that data and tracking it year over year, especially individuals anonymously, because your identifier is essentially your birthday, that we see more indicators going in a positive direction and not in a negative one. We want life for our community to be going better over time, not worse. And obviously, again, it's like that sense of moving mountains. That's not easy to do. You can't account for all of the things someone's going to experience, but you can certainly, if we're doing nothing, we're not helping.
Right.
And if we're at least doing something, then we are. We just did our first partnership with Coastal Bend Trans Alliance on a scholarship. We're going to dabble into that direction as well in time. But I think a lot of the things that we'll do and that we'll deploy are going to be done differently than we've seen others do them. Try to do it. I don't want to say they didn't do it intelligently, but try to do it more intelligently, because it's really important that what we do is successful. Really, again, to the quality of life in Corpus. And as much as I would love to do it just in general for the quality of life of everybody here, the community has to be receptive and supportive of that. And I didn't find that when I did the Axum co-working space. We had a lot of doors slammed and closed in our face from the city, from the university, from the Economic Development Corporation, from legal representatives at our congressmen, things of that sort. So I reassessed and reapplied myself and found a community that I belong to, but also that has been receptive of that and has contributed and put in. And I think that that's where we're starting to have some success. So, and there's sustainability to it. What I did prior to my time with Pride Corpus and the Mosaic project was not sustainable.
Awesome. Right on. Thank you for everything you've talked about today, things you've brought to my attention that are new, and also sharing some similar frustrations, but also similar sense of hope, right? Anything you'd like to throw out there for our watchers, listeners, whatever this ends up being?
Go to therapy.
Yeah.
Right?
If they come to me, even better. Yeah. At least go to somebody. Right.
Right. Yeah. You can't control the world. You can't account for all of the problems. I mean, Lord knows you wake up in the morning and all of a sudden there's 3 new things that are going wrong or going south or is a problem. I mean, I driving an EV right now, but I see that gas keeps going up, and I'm sure the price of everything else continues to rise. So it may not be possible today to go out and make the world better if you're just trying to get by, but then you can at least make yourself better, right? Mm-hmm. And so educate yourself, go to therapy if you can, and just try to work internally, and then hopefully there'll come a time that you can work externally and contribute to your community and try to make it a better place. But in the interim, anytime you have a moment of rage building up or hate, or you think a discriminatory thought, maybe stop and pause for a second before you put it out into the world. Right. Because once it's there, it's lived.
And even for those on the opposite end, those who are kind of feel like the walls are closing in, or feel like that sense of despair kind of robbing them of any sense of opportunity in the world. Also want to draw attention to, I know there's funding being pulled from LGBTQIA plus specific hotlines for suicide.
Yeah, the 988. Yeah.
At least having that and knowing that there are people out there.
But that's where, again, it's community that then steps in and fills that void. Right. I had a good conversation with Father Wickham at one of our events following it. And though you see all this negativity on a national level, there are people here in your community in your backyard that are trying to pick up the torch to make a difference. And so if you go to the Pride Corpus website, there's actually an article on there where at the very homepage where Strengthening Wellness, Dr. Ana Salazar wrote, here's the alternatives. Here are other resources. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's what you can do if you want to help try to save that funding. So it's certainly, though there's a lot of darkness, there are people here, even in our backyard, trying to create light or shine light. And frankly, those are the resources you need that are in your backyard. And so at least for Corpus Christi, there are people stepping up.
Yes, they are. You know, and I'm glad you're bringing attention to them. Glad they're becoming involved. And, you know, I go back, my mind keeps going back to this, right? Where I'm very passionate about trying to be as visible and engaged with people who are feeling suicidal. I've dealt with that myself a couple times over my life. And so I understand what it's like for when that equation makes sense, that the absence of your existence would make the world a better place. Yeah. I know what that equation feels like, even if the math is flawed. So where that kind of guides my heart right now is kind of think before we act, even if there's people that watch us and they don't agree with any what they see as lifestyle choices, right? Even if they don't understand or don't agree, be aware that the things we say have impact, right? Or the things we don't say, part of what I was talking about, but being a passive ally, right? When we see harm happening or the propensity for harm, where do we create those safe harbors so that those that see nothing but darkness and despair in their future, let alone their present, know that they can turn to, right? And that starts with community, and that starts with visibility, and that starts with making yourself known, right? Be that lighthouse, right? Big, colorful lighthouse. Be that lighthouse for people that people you know, but more importantly for people you don't know, people who don't know you exist yet, as that safe harbor. And so thank you very much for spending your time with me today. I know you had a lot going on, and so I'm appreciative of you carving this out, coming in and dealing with my cacophonous setup that I have going on here. When you come back to any other time, this room will be rearranged back out of this, but it served a purpose, and I appreciate you coming in, giving your time here. And hopefully we can do this again next year, kind of catch up where Pride's gone, or
hopefully more progress,
right? Whether it be the progress that Mosaic Project has been able to accomplish over this time, or the new battles we need to fight.
Or what I would say, the thing I'm most excited for, especially as we've seen this increase in other community individuals stepping up and creating space, is that the beauty of what we don't know yet could come that's positive and good, and that others might contribute. That's what I hope maybe the next year we'll talk about something cool someone's doing that's made a difference and created new space and provided more representation.
Right. Because it's an endless supply of bad news.
Certainly.
It's important to also highlight where good work is being done as well, which I definitely think you've done a great job of drawing that attention to today. So again, thank you for your time today coming in. I appreciate you. And any links, socials, important things you want people to chase down and click on?
I would just start at pridecorpuschristi.com and then go down the rabbit hole.
Right on. All right. Thank you very much. And y'all take care.